My name is Taunette Dixon, Taunettedixon.
All right, Taunette. Little bit of reaction on the ruling that came down.
Yeah, well, of course, we were excited about it, happy. It's a good start. We have a really long fight in front of us, and we realize that it's for especially for our small group. We're just 9 strong as far as the women on our board. We're used to doing things like holiday outreaches and other service locally. This is a really big endeavor for us. So to be able to start this process this strong, is of course super exciting for us, but we do realize we have a long road in front of us, and it's always an uphill battle when you're fighting something so big.
What is the next step here? So this was an injunction. When do you know when is there a trial date yet?
So our next step, this injunction is just for 2 weeks. So this is a temporary restraining order. This is telling them to bring the helicopter back to our region. For the next 2 weeks, it has to be the station has to be fully operational, fully manned with a helicopter. Our next step is to ask for a more permanent restraining order that will last throughout the case. So this was just kind of an emergency restraining order. Our next steps are to make it so when we're fighting this and we're pursuing our case, the helicopter remains especially through our crab season, which is beginning in just a few weeks.
The helicopter has not made it back to Newport yet. Do you have any indication when that might happen?
We don't have any indication. We don't have any communication, so it's really hard for us. That's something we'll be monitoring, but the restraining order is demanding that they come back immediately. So we're expecting and hoping that they will follow that judge's ruling.
If that doesn't happen, what's the next step?
The next step is something that we haven't really discussed. So we're right now we are just in the beginning of this fight, and we're just hoping that this little glimpse of positivity towards our endeavor is going to last throughout and we're also hoping that the Coast Guard understands how important this is and respects the judge's ruling.
So the statement, the written statement that we got from the U.S. Coast Guard says, that they're accusing you guys of trying to micromanage the Coast Guard. What would you say to that?
We're just asking the Coast Guard to follow the laws, and we've had this station here for 40 years, and protecting a valuable resource, which is our commercial fishing fleet. So we're just asking for them to follow the law, follow the guidelines, and do what they're supposed to do before they try to remove such a huge asset from a community that desperately needs it.
What is the law that you're asking them to follow? What are some of the claims on the lawsuit?
Yeah, so after our last lawsuit, there were some things that were implemented, signed by President Trump in his first term, that they had to do. They had to follow some steps before they could remove a helicopter. One of those is there's like a year and a half space that they have to give us after announcing to us. They have to let us know. They have to let our politicians, our local, state, federal politicians know that they plan this. They have to do some safety assessments to make sure that what kind of harm this is going to cause to our community. So none of those things have been done as far as we know.
So the bill that you're referring to, right, required that they notify and that they do all of those if they're closing the air station. did the judge ultimately just say that's the same thing when you remove the helicopter, or?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
Oh, I was just trying to understand because the bill says that they have to do all those things if they remove the air station. And the DHS statement said, they're not removing, they're not closing the air station, they're just moving the helicopter. Did the judge's decision ultimately just say, or I guess we don't have that yet because it hasn't gone to trial. This is just the injunction.
Yeah, yeah, and in the injunction, she is asking the Coast Guard to have that station fully manned and fully operational for the 2 weeks and until we go into our next hearing.
Gotcha. Anything else you would add that we haven't covered in this interview yet?
Just that, right now is when we need the support of our community, our state, our politicians. Everybody needs to kind of, we feel like this is a nonpartisan issue. This is life or death for our community. We feel like, although this is a huge endeavor that we're taking, we're doing it for the right reason. We're not suing for gain. We are suing so that so we can retain our air station. So right now we just need support. So we need donations to continue. We're not only doing this, but we're also doing our holiday outreach, and we're doing all of the other things that we're assisting our families. We're doing all those things at the same time as we're doing this. So any donations we will kindly accept.
Nick Edwards, and I'm actually the secretary of Shrimp Producers Marketing Cooperative, SPMC, Shrimp Producers Marketing Cooperative. We have about 25 vessels as members of our association that fish the pink cocktail shrimp, Jordani pink shrimp.
Gotcha. Well, Nick, let's see if we can rewind a little bit and tell me a little bit about that day. Do you remember how your day started, what the weather was like?
Yeah, well, first of all, I decided the night before that I wasn't going to fish that day, and I was going to make a 120-mile-an-hour trip, or 120-mile trip to Coos Bay, Oregon, to unload. I was fishing up off of Cascade Head, which is above Newport, and the weather was a little bad that night, and so I called the plant manager in Newport, Dave Wright, and Dave let me go into Newport to unload instead of bucking all the way home and 35 knot winds to Coos Bay, which would have been a long ride. So if I would have went set a course to Coos Bay, I would have been 20 miles offshore, 16 to 20 miles offshore. My course to Newport kept me about 12 miles offshore, which is a lot closer. So that night I decided to start running and take a little nap and then wake up and start running home or to Newport. And then I think it was about 6 a.m. I had some alarms going off on the boat, and they were high water alarms in my fish hold in my shaft alley, letting me know that the vessel needed to be pumped out in the shaft alley. And to give you an idea, it was the start of shrimp season, and April 14th of 2004, and it was the very first trip of shrimp season. And I traveled all the way up to Newport to load my vessel with shrimp and try to. Anyway, I had about 65,000 pounds of shrimp on board, so it was ironically the boat was paid off after 7 years when I hit the dock, and so I had about 65,000 pounds of shrimp on the boat. I decided to quit fishing and not fish the weather and make it in the Newport and unload. And that's when everything started to spiral. So about 6 in the morning, the alarms went off. I was down pumping out the shaft alley a few times, and then the alarms went off, and I was cruising along for another half hour again, and then the alarms went off again, and I go, huh. So I went down, pumped the shaft alley out again. I had a 2-inch pump and a 3-inch pump. Well, but I was using the 2-inch pump. And then after that, the alarms kept going off quicker, shorter. So I would get, the next was about 5 minutes. And then, so my friend called me, Corey Rock on the fishing vessel Kylie Lynn, said, where are you at? You're not here in the area. I said, I'm driving home to Newport to unload. And he could hear the bilge alarms going off in the background. He says, hey, sounds like you got your hands full. And I said, Corey, I need a Mayday call. And the Kylie Lynn, Corey Rock, he's the one that put out the Mayday call for me. Then they dispatched a helicopter out of the Newport helo facility. And so that was about 7 o'clock, and well, it's about 6:50 in the morning when the Mayday call went out. That helicopter arrived about 50 minutes later at the same time that a motor lifeboat, a brand new 47-footer out of Depot Bay arrived at the same time. And on-scene weather was about 35 knots of southerly wind. And the helicopter, when it showed up, they could see that the vessel was severely compromised. So to give you an idea, 75-foot vessel, the whole stern underwater. Then the fish hold has water in the fish hold, also in where the shrimp compartment was, with 65,000 pounds of shrimp. So the water was coming through the stern, leaking into the fish hold because it didn't have a watertight shaft alley at the time. And the Coast Guard realized that I was over vessel stability at that point. So they advised us to abandon ship. Helo was right overhead. It pulled the pin out, to kick it out of gear, run back on the back deck. My guys were in survival. They weren't in survival suits. They had survival suits on the back deck, but they were wearing life jackets because we're too lethargic in the water with a survival suit to get away from the vessel if the Coast Guard, in fact, is going to be there to help you assist to get off the vessel. And so I made a decision to have the guys wear life jackets. And so when the Coast Guard arrived, and we were going to abandon ship, the boat rolled up on its port side, and the helo up above, we were going to jump in on the port side as the boat's starting to capsize, and the helicopter up above was going like this. No, you need to go to the other side because the vessel was going to capsize on top of us. So, with the helicopter blades going, the water going everywhere, and we, got our composure, got everybody over to the starboard side. And then we got everybody that was getting, on three, we were going to jump in. And on three, two of us jumped in the water. The third person, my deckhand for many years, Eric Perez, stayed on the boat. And both of us jumped in the water. There was a third man on the boat. I was out there on a stabilizer chain, hanging on to this chain, 40 feet away from the boat on an outrigger, and hanging on the chain, going up and down, trying to talk him in to jump in the water. And eventually he did jump in the water because the boat started to capsize more. And that young man ended up beating us all to the motor lifeboat. And at any given time, that rescue swimmer up in the helicopter up above was hanging out that door. He was directing us what to do. That was an insight that helped save our lives, in my opinion. Yeah. And so, I ended up getting off the boat, and what I had was a pair of sweats and one sock and no shirt. But it was my one bad day at the office. And, what everybody's talking about now that I know for sure is that a 1 hour response time is a very good chance for a successful rescue on anybody out in the ocean. Anything longer than that, 2 hours, it's a body recovery. And that's the difference between a 1 hour rescue and a 2 hour rescue. Hypothermia sets in. Took 5 guys to pull me into the boat back then. So that's what happened April 14th, 2004. That was my bad day at the office.
So how long were you in the water, do you know?
Maybe 15 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's a decent amount of time with no wetsuit.
You lose all manual dexterity of your fingers. Yeah.
So did you have a life jacket on?
Yes.
Okay.
No shirt. I don't know how I lost my shirt, but I did.
But you're just in the water in a life jacket, just kind of waiting for folks to get onto the boat. You're getting on the boat.
No. There was the helicopter overhead and a motor lifeboat, a 47-footer that was staying a safe distance away from the vessel, because when a boat capsizes, a flopper chain or a flopper can be going, another 80 feet out. So we had to get safely away from the vessel, swim away from the vessel. And the motor lifeboat ended up picking all 3 of us out of the water with a helicopter right overhead.
How many people were on the boat with you?
3 vessels, 3 of us, 3 people on board. Most everybody in the shrimp fleet uses 3 or 4 people on board.
What did
So
it, feel like being in the water for that long?
when we knew that Coast Guard helicopter showed up, I knew that we had a good chance of surviving because they would have jumped in at any given time. And like I said, the helo and the motor lifeboat out of Depot Bay arrived at the same time, and the Jaguar sunk in 37 fathoms straight off of Depot Bay with a brand new paint job on it and 65,000 pounds of shrimp. And the vessel would have been paid off when I hit the dock after paying on it for 7 years.
That is
So
rough. Hope you had some insurance.
I did. It was able to get the insurance check and then fly to Bila Battery, Alabama, or Florida to look at vessels. And then I bought a vessel in Florida and I took it to Bila Battery, Alabama, to work on it there. But yeah, I mean, I was $100,000 underinsured as well. So but you know what? It didn't matter. I have a wife and 4 children. I got to be part of their lives after that. So
Yeah. When was the first time on the boat that you realized, okay, this thing's gonna sink?
oh, hold on for a second. Excuse me. Can you say that again? Sorry, I had to shut off.
Yeah, what was the
Say that
point?
again.
You talked about these alarms going off and knowing there was something wrong. What was the point that you were on the boat that you realized, okay, we're not gonna make it. This boat's going down.
Well, first indicator is that our alarm systems, I have Murphy alarm switches there, 2 backups. And once those alarms go off, you just simply go down in the bilge, right, in the shaft alley, and it's water that leaks from the ice and the shrimp into the shaft alley because 65,000 pounds of shrimp and 15 ton of ice melts. So when the water is in the ice, or the ice is melting in the shrimp, it'll set off an alarm, 20, 50 gallons of water, and then it reaches a level, sets off an alarm, and then you just go down and pump out the shaft alley or whatever that needs pumping. Well, once the frequency of the alarm started going from a half hour to 15 minutes to 5 minutes, then I knew I was in trouble.
Did you ever find out what actually happened, or still to this
Nope,
day?
there's Edendale Jacobs ROV Explorations took a drone or a remote operated vehicle to the bottom of the ocean and took pictures and videos of the Jaguar on the bottom of the ocean, sitting out there with its outriggers out with its brand new paint job on it, but nothing from the stern that you could tell. I sunk by the stern, which is the lazarette. And when the lazarette fills up with water, which is supposed to be void, there's 5 compartments basically in a fishing vessel. On a 75-foot vessel like the Jaguar, the stern is supposed to be void. When the Coast Guard had showed up there, and prior to that, we had pulled the lazarette and found out that the lazarette was completely full of water. So that water in the lazarette, with my vessel back then, it was the Jaguar, there was a pipe, and the water from the in the lazarette went straight into the shaft alley, which was in the fish hold. So the water from the lazarette was, with a 2-inch pipe, was going into the water into the shaft alley, and that ends up filling up the fish hold. So with the fish hold 3/4 full of water with 65,000 pounds of shrimp, and the lazarette being full, and then the fuel compartments, which were completely full of water soluble oil, and my stern tanks, when the helicopter showed up, all the water from the back deck of the stern was going all the way up to the back of the house, and water was going into the engine room. That's when they suggested that we abandon ship.
At what point did you realize? So you said the alarms had started to get to 5 minutes. Was this before or after you had placed the Mayday call?
Say that again.
So you talked about you're hearing these alarms go off every 5 minutes now. At what point did you place the Mayday call, or did you ask your friend to?
I had too much on my hands, and my friend Corey Rock made the Mayday call for me. And he didn't ever find out what had happened, right? So he, an hour later, the boat had sunk, and the boat was on the bottom of the ocean, and they picked us up out of the water, and we went into Depot Bay, and everybody was in shock. So was I.
Did you realize at the point that you asked your friend to make the Mayday call, did you realize that the boat wasn't going to make it, or were you still?
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah.
What were your thoughts at that point?
Just to get everybody off safely, get my crew with survival suits on the back deck and life jackets on so they're able to get away from the vessel. There's still a life raft on top that we could use in case the Coast Guard didn't arrive there and things escalated rather fastly. But I kept the engine going full bore to raise the stern up. Once you slowed down on the stern sunk. So I kept it going wide open all the way until the Coast Guard arrived.
And so once you placed the Mayday call and you knew it was happening, you knew it was going down, and you're getting your crew ready, um, what are your thoughts? Are you thinking you guys are going to make it at that point, knowing that the helicopter is in Newport? Did you know the helicopter was in Newport?
Oh, I knew the helicopter was in Newport and I knew it was coming. I was in communication with the helicopter. I was only one in the wheelhouse and the galley. I made my crew stay on the back deck. It's safer to be out there than it is inside the wheelhouse in case the boat capsizes. So I didn't have the time initially to make the Mayday call because I was trying to run a 3-inch pump and a 2-inch pump and then try to get everybody organized with their survival suits and life jackets because this is a real. They're going, no, we're not going to sink. I said, no, we have to be prepared. The Coast Guard is on their way. I mean, the crew was kind of in shock. They're going, oh, he's serious. Yeah, well, once the water was coming over the stern all the way up to the back of the house, they knew it was very serious as well.
So, as you're talking to the Coast Guard, are you feeling hopeful that you're going to get saved in time? Are you thinking about worst case scenarios? What does one think at that point? Do your thoughts go to your wife and kids?
There wasn't any time for that. It was just the steps to make sure that everybody on board is doing what they need to do to be out on the back deck, know where the life raft is, and if something happens, they have to get the life raft down off the roof, throw it in the water, pull the pin. I had to stay in the wheelhouse at that time. I had a loud hailer that I can talk to my crew on the deck, and we were aware of everything that was going on. We knew how much water was in the fish hold. I mean, you could see it. We knew how much water was in the lazarette. It was completely full. And then the fuel tanks, the compartment between the fish hold and the lazarette was completely full with water soluble oil. So we were over vessel stability at that point. The Coast Guard knew it when they saw it, when they flew right over and said, nope, you got to get off. And everybody, me included, I wanted to try to save my boat. I wanted to be able to try to pump out the lazarette, but every time you tried to pump something out, the water would fill the whole stern up, and there was just no saving it at that point.
I think a lot of people are curious, like what goes through your mind, when something like this happens. And it sounds like you were just like, taking the steps needed to try and save your crew and save your boat. And you weren't really thinking about, oh, shoot, I might not make it. It didn't cross your mind at any point.
The worst thing was telling the crew that, listen, they're here. We just have to swim away from the boat and we all have to jump in on 3. 1, 2, 3. And 2 of us jump in. It was the guy's first trip on a fishing vessel too.
Oh,
Tommy Barton, his very first trip. He never went to sea again. And I went out hanging on that chain on the outrigger out there, trying to talk the other deckhand, Eric Perez, to jump in. And he did. Like I said, he was the first one, fastest swimmer, and made it to the motor lifeboat the fastest. But knowing that everybody got off, and then I'm not that fast of a swimmer, and plus you have to swim away from the boat. Every wave is burying you, and you got salt water in your eyes. But I knew once we were in the water away from the boat that they would have jumped in for me if I couldn't have made it. And back then, in April, the water's very cold. I've used 4 helicopters and 7 motor lifeboats in 46 years as a commercial fisherman, and I've owned 3 different vessels. The Coast Guard is our cavalry.
So this wasn't the first time you had used a helicopter?
Oh no, I've used, yeah, I had to use my first helicopter experience. I was a young captain in Coos Bay, fishing running the fishing vessel Bernadette, another 75-foot Allied, and I was out fishing cocktail shrimp straight out front, about 12, 14 miles offshore. the weather, I was out there by myself. The weather was kind of bad, and I decided to load the gears about 30, 35 knots. And in the process of loading the gear, one of my deckhands, 22-year-old Mark Gibson, tripped over the bulwarks and fell overboard. He tried to hang on with one arm, but he fell overboard, and the weather was not nice. So I had my shrimp nets in the stern ramp. I was in the process of loading the gear, so my nets were still attached to the boat, or the back end or the cot ends of the boat. So I turned the boat around into the seas, and I was bucking into the weather, 8, 12-foot swells with 30 knots of wind. So I was plowing through the water. I got up to him with the bow of the boat, and I hit him with the bow of the boat, but I drove him into the water about 10, 12 feet, and he popped up by the outrigger alongside the boat. And then my starboard net got in the wheel, and I'm dead in the water. The guy pops up right alongside the boat. We're throwing a life ring at him, and it blows back in our face because of the wind. And he's hanging onto the shrimp net, trying to hang on. And eventually in the water, he couldn't hang on because he'd been in the water for probably 7 minutes when I'd turned around. So he was losing his manual dexterity in his fingers. So he fell overboard in the middle of April, bad weather, 35 knots. And I put out, and he was wearing just boots and rain gear. Luckily, he was wearing orange rain gear. So when I got the net in the wheel, I put out the Mayday call to Group North Bend. They dispatched a helo. They were on scene probably 50 to 55 minutes to there. It takes 20 minutes to prepare for a helicopter to leave, right? Anyway, they were on scene. Mark Gibson had drifted 2.8 miles from the Bernadette. 2.8 miles, right? So we were able to vector the helicopter because they were too far inshore. We had them go further offshore, and they found him. We didn't know until later. They said they had the victim, but they got him in the helicopter and it saved his life. He was in the water for 55 minutes just in rain gear.
In the water, 55 minutes?
But Mark Gibson was about 250 pounds, a little bit of body fat on him like me, right? And he was in the water with boots and rain gear, and he 55 minutes he made it. Nobody's going to last 55 minutes and with a shirt, or he had rain gear on, a hoodie, a raincoat, and insulation. The worst thing for him is what he remembers is the Goonie birds, the albatrosses were all around him, pecking at him like they were part of it. He was part of the food source. So anyway, 2.8 miles, he drifted away from the vessel. I thought,
you couldn't move because the nets are caught in your motor. Yes.
So my nets are butterflied, and they're acting as a kite. So when you got 2.5, 30-mile-an-hour winds, right? And the nets are out, you drift faster than just somebody that's low in the water, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that was, and it took literally, I'll never forget this, that motor lifeboat that showed up, the old 44s, it took an hour just to pass a monkey's fist to the line to me, because some of the crew were sick and incapacitated, and the captain had to run down from the top from driving the vessel down and throw the monkey's fist himself, and we got it. And then I was towed home by the Coast Guard, and I've never fished any bad weather like that ever again until the day I sunk with a jaguar, and I was on my way home. So anything can happen.
You told me 3 different times or 4 different times?
4.
Okay, so what are the other 2?
Medevac people off the boat.
Okay.
Medevac with a helicopter. Yeah.
Okay.
2 different medevacs off the vessel. Yeah.
Did they make it in both of those situations?
They weren't life and death, but they were, one person was having a heart attack that was lifted off, and the other had a broken arm, I believe it was. So
the heart attack, he made it.
Everybody, say that again.
The guy who had a heart attack, he made it.
Yes. Yeah. He lived. Yes.
What was the response time for the helicopter in that situation?
Oh, they're usually the ones out of North Bend. For me, both times they were 50 to 55 minutes. The one down off of Cape Blanco was the furthest, So you're what, 40 miles from town, 35 miles from town. But once the Mayday call goes out, there's a time frame to that what they have to do, their checklist to get everybody on there to go in, get into the helicopter, and then have it, and everybody's ready to go. There's a time frame allowed for that. It's needed.
The 90 minutes that's estimated in the litigation, is that pretty accurate in your mind, or how do you see that?
That's very accurate. The helo in Newport that I utilized, and the two helos, or the other helo times, were all about 50 to 55 minutes. If you're going to add the other flight time from Group North Bend, what's a 100-mile drive just to get up to Newport from Coos Bay, 98 miles, you're adding a time frame to it. And that hour and a half can be the big difference in, rescuing lives or a body recovery. And, even 30 minutes is great. And sometimes in 30 minutes, things go wrong. You still don't make it. I'm surprised that I had no knowledge until I read the article that, that helicopter in Newport has saved over 500 lives, only 30 of them fishermen. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, a lot of people get swept out to sea and rock, caught on rocks and fallen over cliffs and all kinds of stuff, for sure. What are your thoughts on, because you're still in the shrimping business, right? And are you still going out on vessels these days?
Yeah, I don't fish. I personally don't run my boat for pink shrimp. The last 2 years I'll be fishing Dungeness crabs, so I'll make the first trip of the year, and then after that I'll turn it over to my other captain. I have a captain and crew that have worked for me for 20 years. So but in the middle of winter, in the first trip of the year, trying to get the gear out, I have a rather large vessel by comparison to some of the others. I'm 84 feet long. I can pack all my 500 pots. And I usually I go to sea with 6 people when I'll start Dungeness crab season. So and wherever we go, the one thing I want to tell you, Christine, is that this year, give you an idea for shrimp, I fished shrimp down off of Trinidad, California this year. I run it all the way up to Westport, Washington to unload it. And then I drive from Westport, Washington after I take ice, and I run all the way back down to Coos Bay, Oregon to fish shrimp again, so I can, utilize my platform and fill my vessel. But those gaps in between the areas, here I'm a transit boat, going from Trinidad to Westport. Imagine everybody else that's out there, whether it's sailboats, tugs, barges, ships, everybody, that hour response time is so crucial, whether it's somebody having a heart attack on a ship or a cruise ship that goes by, that hour response time is crucial on so many different incidents. But being in the water, that's a nightmare. 15 minutes in the water is too long. I've been there. Unofficial member, well, I guess official member of the Polar Bear Club. I don't want to do it again.
So, you're planning on going out on that first crabbing trip of the year. That's coming up. Who knows when with the season? But what are you thinking? This is still in litigation. It could still get appealed. We don't know if the helicopter's back yet, right? Do you know if it's back? Have you guys heard anything?
I just know by using a tracker, an app that you can track, helicopters. The last time I think that helicopter was sighted on an app that I was using, that my friend showed me, it was left, I think, October 28th out of Newport, but it's here in Coos Bay. So okay. I think there's 4 helos in Coos Bay, or 4 targets, call signs in the North Bend hangar. So you can track it on. My colleague
was saying that, yeah, you guys have 4 out there. And then when do you leave for for the crabbing season? Do you leave from Newport then, or do you leave from Coos Bay?
No, I'm in Coos Bay.
Okay, so you don't go crabbing in Newport. You go crabbing in Coos Bay.
Oh no. I've crabbed many times up off of Garibaldi. I have an Oregon permit. I will travel all of Oregon. I'll start somewhere and then I'll move my gear somewhere else, or I'll start. Many seasons I've started up off of Cascade Head. So you got to go where the crab are.
Okay. Are you concerned at all now, knowing that there is not a helicopter and there may not be when you start that season? Are you making different considerations as a result?
it is the most crucial time needed to have a helicopter when Dungeness crab vessels are leaving port with a significant amount of gear on the vessels, right? And so you have a lot of crab pots on the boat. Every boat will pack a different amount of pots, but they, when you have a lot of your gear on the boat and then you have the weather included on it, right? You have a chance of losing pots overboard or things like that. And it's it's it, it's the crucial time if there's ever a rescue needed. It is during the dumping of crab gear and with vessels crossing the bar. There's always like Newport, those guys do such a great job there being on the bar when people are crossing because it's all like a big ballet of boats going out all at once, and on the high tide, and everybody crosses on the high tide to safely get out. But there's always those incidences that happen where you're going to need, a helicopter on scene. But for the fishing industry or the Dungeness crab fishery, not having one in Newport, it's the largest crab fleet on the whole West Coast is Newport. I think Gary Ripka said it well. 85 vessels will be leaving there at the same time frame. You're 450 to 500 people. We'll have we won't have half that, but probably 60% of that or 70% of that in Coos Bay. Newport's the largest by far.
Are you concerned that this is not going to get resolved in time for that? And will you make considerations about where you go if that's the case?
I'm going to fish where I usually go. We just have to take the precautions, right? And we already do. I mean, the last thing we want to do is lose somebody overboard or capsize, right? Or put the vessel and your crew at risk. I mean, that's the last thing we want to do. So everybody will be, we're keeping our fingers crossed. Reading, last night that the injunction is that that helicopter will be returned back to Newport. That was music to my ears last night hearing that.
All right. Thanks so much for your time on this. I appreciate it. I was wondering, Nick, if there's any pictures or video you can send. You mentioned somebody got underwater video of the boat. Do you have anything like that you could send?
Of the Jaguar?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll probably look on the computer. I might be bawling like a baby, but yeah,
Oh man.
I do have all that footage. Yes.
Is it, like, what's it like losing a boat that you've had? How many years did you have that?
I had it 7 years, and as I said, I owed $22,000 on it, and that trip was a $28,000 trip. It was paid for when I hit the dock, and I just didn't make it to the dock. So but wipe your nose off, start all over again. That's all I know. And the most important thing is that I realize that wow, I got a wife and 4 children. I get to be a better dad, a better father, a better husband. So I think about that all the time.
What was the homecoming like that day? What was your homecoming like?
Cheerful.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Could you send me pictures, videos, anything like that sooner rather than later? So we got to get to editing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll look on the computer here. I have to work on something else that I told you about that I got to do. That's important for this for the helicopter. So, but I'll try to get you a still picture of the Jaguar on the bottom of the ocean. I have it. Yes.
That would be great. And then if you have any family pictures or crew pictures or other stuff on the boat that we can use, because we have to kind of fill in, a lot of void there since we don't have a lot of video for this.
Okay. And is this going to be, how are you going to use this, Christina?
Yeah, we're going to do a broadcast piece on this at 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
So, and then it will be on our website as a web story soon.
Is this going to be used up in the Portland, Salem area or
Yeah. So we're K2 News Channel 2. You should get that in Newport. I don't know about Coos Bay, but we'll let our affiliate KVAL down there know, KMTR. And maybe they'll broadcast it. If not, you can go to our website, k2.com, and then click on the article. And once the video airs, you'll see the video on there too. So you can see what aired on TV as well.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I made it through this without crying. I got close.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And then, when do you think you'd be able to send a few pictures? We have to edit by like 2:30, so I'm hoping.
I'll get my wife to help me here, and we'll look on the computer. And I don't know if there'll be snapshots. How I'll do it. I mean, they're on the computer. I just don't know how to. I don't want to take a picture. I want to email the picture to you is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I have it.
Okay. Okay.
And
All
I'll
right.
try
Well,
to find pictures of the Jaguar or crew pictures of that. I'll find a picture of the Jaguar, yes.
okay. Well, thank you so much, Nick. Have a good rest of your day. I appreciate it.